These are the craziest UFO sighting stories ever shared on the Joe Rogan Experience podcast.
Just loaded up our equipment. We're headed out. And I looked up ahead and I saw this kind of glow coming through the trees.
And, we did witness something while we were flying in our jets, but, we were doing it we witnessed it in the context of our just everyday flying in our mission.
Yeah, it was still something really strange, kind of caught my eye.
What did they describe?
They described this glow rising up.
And what year was it that you witnessed this?
So we started seeing these in 2014 was the earliest that I know. 2013, late 2013, early 2014.
Starting with episode 1883, where Navy pilot Ryan Graves tells his UFO encounter.
What year was it that you witnessed this?
So we started seeing these in 2014 was the earliest that I know. 2013, late 2013, early 2014.
And could you describe what was the very first experience?
Yeah, so for me personally, the experience was simply just flying out to the area like I would any other day. And instead of seeing an empty airspace with just my wing person or another squadron doing something in a different block, there were all of a sudden a lot of different radar contacts, which is immediately a problem because, we could be hitting one of those or someone working in our area. And this was happening because we upgraded our radar the best we could tell. We were in a earlier radar called the APG-73, and we had come back from deployment. We entered a maintenance phase, it's called. We kind of do a little bit less flying, upgrade the jets if we need to, do any long-lasting maintenance, and we upgraded to the APG-79, which was a much better radar.
What is the thought? How are you feeling when these, is there an evolution of the thought pattern of how you're addressing these things and thinking about them? Initially, you're thinking they're errors. When do you start getting a thought that, what the fuck is this thing?
Yeah. So that happened when we visually saw one. And the first time we visually saw one, the object was directly at what we call the entry point of the area. So, that box that I told you about in the sky that starts 10 miles off the coast, there's a particular GPS, location and altitude where incoming traffic will fly in. And outbound traffic will fly in the exact same spot, but will fly out 1,000 feet lower. There were two aircraft from my squadron, VFA-11, and they flew, took off as a flight of two. That means they're essentially flying in a formation like this. And as they hit the area, one of these objects went right between the aircraft. The lead air crew saw the object. The Dash 2 aircraft crew did not, which is not surprising because they're usually, you're very focused on flying formation. You're just staring right at that aircraft. The lead really has actual leeway to look around. So he saw it, and, he immediately came back. I have to assume he didn't have it on his radar because he wouldn't have flown through this object at the entrance point. He turned around, flew back, landed, and I was in the ready room when he come back, and, he had all his gear on, which typically is not a good thing. Because you want to get that stuff off as fast as possible. So usually means, there's a problem of some nature. And, he was just sitting there saying, hey, I almost hit one of those damn things. And we all knew what he was referring to, even though we didn't necessarily have a name for it, just because we were seeing these so much. And he described it. He described it just as a black or dark gray cube. And that cube was inside of a clear or translucent sphere. And essentially the apex or the corners of that cube, best he could tell, were touching that inside of that sphere.
And that description mirrors many of the descriptions that people have had of these, whatever you want to call them. Whether they're calling them UAPs now for some strange reason. UFOs, I don't know, does it have a dirty connotation to it? And is it tainted because of so many crazy people talk about UFOs? Is that what it is?
It does come with a lot of assumptions baked in.
It baked in. So that's something, but whatever it is, that is a design that people have reported seeing before. That this translucent sphere and this cube, can you see through the cube?
Not to my understanding, no.
So it's some sort of solid black cube that's inside this translucent sphere. Mm-hmm. And it's just floating around and flying around the sky.
So, that's a good point. Is it floating around? Is it flying around? It's doing both, which is strange, right? Because you could think of that description and go, okay, that's kind of some kind of weird balloon maybe with stuff in it. And that's certainly, one way. If you just view that angle of it, then it seems explainable. But when that, the balloon-like object starts cruising down at, zero point 0.8 Mach, that nullifies that particular idea. And you'll see that a lot, where it's not just like that one picture or that one behavior. It's really, you kind of have to zoom out a bit and look at everything in relation to each other and say, okay, why is this weird? Okay, it was hanging out in a racetrack pattern. That's not exotic. But when you learn it was doing it for, perhaps 13 hours.
13 hours?
Perhaps they were out there all the time, So, I land and I go back. And we weren't on a Intel mission to analyze these, right? We're going to do our training. It's very expensive, $30K an hour to fly these things, right? So really the only time we can put energy into looking at these things is when we're kind of transiting back and forth or waiting for a fight to start. And so, it's never like a dedicated analysis.
On episode 1597, Joe Rogan is shocked at Travis Walton's alien abduction story.
Let's take it back to the day that this happened. You're 22, you're logging, you're in the woods. Tell me what happened.
Well, it's just, when you're done working, hard physical labor, everybody's kind of jacked up, and there was a whole lot of chatter in the car. We're just talking away, it's starting to get dark. We just loaded up our equipment. We're headed out. And I looked up ahead, and I saw this kind of glow coming through the trees. First, I thought, no big deal. It was deer hunting season. Thought maybe there was some hunters camped up on the hill up there.
What do you remember when you were going through your mind and you're trying? I mean, this is a story you've told so many times, and this is a story that's been turned into a film, which it's got to be very surreal. But when you look into your memories and you try to go back to that day.
Well, I don't try. It's something I try to block out, but it's unforgettable. And there's...
What do you remember seeing when you ran into the clearing?
Well, the whole clearing was lit up with this weird glow. It's really hard for any artist or movie to try to duplicate the strange glow there was there. Made everything look really, really pretty eerie, and...
So you see this thing, this disc-shaped craft,
Yeah.
and then what happens?
It started to move and started to get louder.
Louder.
Yeah. It was the guys in the truck heard it too. There was a low thunderous kind of a rumble that you actually sort of felt more than heard. And then there were other high-pitched frequencies. I was talking to a group of students from technical college, and they were really interested in what the sound was like to try to, compare that with theories that they had concerning what might be their propulsion. But the increase in volume, it suddenly got louder as it started to move. And, at the same time, the guys in the truck were screaming, "Get away from there, let's go, get back in the truck, let's go." And which would have been the smart thing to do. But as soon as it moved, it startled me, and I just ducked for cover. There was a log there. I got down behind this log, and they were screaming, "Let's go, let's go, let's go." And I didn't need to be told. I was just going to, stand up and run away. But see, when I jumped for cover, I went down and forward to reach where the log would hide me. And that brought me closer to it. So when I stood up, at that point, that was the closest I was to the object.
How close?
It was still like 8 or 10 feet away, from the surface of it. But that was when the energy discharge happened. I've worked on a number of theories about what might have happened. At the time, some of the other guys on the truck were thinking, immediately Steve said, "It got him." Like, if you shot a deer, you got it,
Right.
And so it might not have been, as we assumed at first, that it was some kind of stun gun or something, but maybe just closing that gap allowed this energy to leap to ground through me. And
Like static electricity or something.
yeah, one thing that really weighs heavy in that direction is that when I found years later that they have satellites or something that record the number of lightning strikes, and that area has the highest frequency of lightning strikes of any place in the continental United States, except for the Everglades. The Everglades has a bit more, but that's over water. So that adds to another theory. What were they doing there? So I kind of leaned towards this theory that perhaps they were looking for fulgurite, for a very unique kind of crystal that would be formed by that kind of blast of energy. I'd never heard of fulgurite before.